Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel Tour update. And today we mark the 104th day since the Islamist terror groups from the Hamas-plagued Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping 246 individuals, including women, children, elderly, and infants. 136 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. Turning now to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, what can you update us on the latest?
So, Jonathan, I just came back from the so-called Hostage Square, which is just across the street from the Israeli Defense Forces and Ministry of Defense compound called Hakiria in Tel Aviv. And there was a very somber event, mark the first anniversary of Kfir Bibas. Kfir Bibas is the youngest hostage taken on October the 7th. He was some 9 months old when he was captured. Now he has turned 1 year old. His fate, along with that of his brother and the mother, is not known. People hope, of course, for his safe and sound return. But today, they have especially focused on this young toddler, Kfir Bibas, as a symbol of both the misery, the cruelty, and the unknown fate of all of these hostages. And perhaps, no one is certain yet, perhaps some medical supplies which Israel has tried to give them through Qatar, through Egypt, through the Red Cross. Perhaps they have started reaching them, but as of now, it is unknown. And whether there will be a second hostage deal is yet unknown. Now, Jonathan, I know that later in the program, you are going to expand your scope eastward, the Pakistani-Iranian conflagration. So I won't touch on that. Let me just tell our viewers that on all three active fronts, there have been events over the last 24 hours. In Gaza, quite fierce battles, especially in the southern part of Khan Yunis, and even more to the south towards Rafah, in the central refugee camps, and somewhat in the northern part, where Israel has a better hold on territory, but there are still remnants of Hamas activity. In Tulkarem, in West Bank or Samaria, there has been a very long operation of a day and a half in which several terrorists, for both executing terror acts and planning additional ones, have been killed or captured. And along the Lebanese border, the Israeli Air Force has carried out several effective strikes. And the background for that is Herzi Halevi saying very important, giving two very important messages. One is that the probability of war is heightened as it has never been recently. And the second is a moderate signal to Hezbollah that the war aim of Israel, while seeking a change in the situation, will not be, at least not explicitly, the collapse or destruction of Hezbollah, but only back to the status quo of October the 6th regarding the residents and the villages and towns of northern Israel, which means that Hezbollah is expected to withdraw its forces and rockets north of the Litani River.
Thank you, Mr. Oren. And with that, I bid you farewell as you continue to your next location. But I'd like to turn to the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Missile Defense, namely Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish. Thank you for joining us, General. I'd like to ask you on a couple of issues. Obviously, we had some rocket fire emanating from the central part of the Gaza Strip, which targeted the Israeli community of Netivot. We saw additional fire also from Lebanon directed towards Israel, and also a faulty alarm that was sounded in the southern city of Eilat. Initially, there were concerns of some type of rocket being launched from the Houthi-controlled Yemen territories, namely the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, but that later emerged as a faulty report. What can you tell us about all those different fronts shortly, if I may ask? And then also briefly on the composition of the Gaza Strip, since I understand that the intensity has reduced in the northern Gaza Strip as well as in the southern Gaza Strip.
Well, Jonathan, let's start with the Gaza Strip. Around Khan Yunis, there is still an intense fight. The IDF sees it today as, I would say, the main effort in this area of the Gaza Strip. Therefore, around Khan Yunis, we still see some a large amount of Israeli forces led by the 98th Division. You're right that overall we reduced the power of Israeli divisions over there. It was announced by the IDF that there are I would say there are now 3 main divisions that are in this area. We have to say that at least in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, most of what was needed to be done has been done. And the IDF is also looking for a long-term war, and one of the main reasons for decreasing the amount of forces is because he wants to have, let's put it this way, an heir to a long fight, and then people need to be refreshed and to train and so on. So this is the way of thinking of the IDF while he's fighting in the Gaza Strip. But still, we have to say that around Khan Yunis, where apparently the leaders of the Hamas are there, the hostages are in this area. So there is still a large amount of forces, as I mentioned. In the northern part, indeed, we still see this fight between the Hezbollah and Israel. We have to remember that 2 days ago there was quite a heavy strike by the IDF in the Saluki area, and those rockets that are coming from the Lebanese side are more kind of they are reacting to our reaction, and we keep it in this area. We said it again and again and again that it looks like the Hezbollah from his side and also the Israelis from our side are not looking to open a large war. So we still call it kind of under the full-scale war threshold, but there is a war. If you would ask the Israeli population in the northern part of Israel, and of course those that were evacuated for their homes, and we have thousands and thousands of Israeli, around 90,000 of them that were evacuated from the northern part of Israel, and we have to remember it. So we see it now, but we also have to say that probably in one point we would see a change in the northern part of Israel. We have to remember that today the military strategic of Israel is offensive in the south, active defensive in the northern part. But I'm saying that it would be needed to change because there is no way that those 90,000 Israelis would go back to the same reality that they had on the 6th of October with the Hezbollah special forces, the Rajuan forces, which are very close to the Israeli border. So hopefully this would be solved by a diplomatic way, but Israel must prepare itself also to other ways of taking care of this challenge. The last thing, going back to your question, is of course what is happening in Yemen and the Houthis, and we see that they are still trying to show, mainly the U.S. That attacked them a few days ago, that they are still capable, and they are trying to shoot some missiles. And it is a question if what we saw was one episode, or this is a real change on the strategy, and now the coalition forces are operating also in the offensive. This is I think the strategic question that needs to be asked in this area. I'm sure that we would elaborate it later, but of course it is very interesting to see the Iranian behavior, and they're shooting long-range missiles toward Iraq, Syria, now to Pakistan. But I will stop here because I'm sure that we will talk about it later.
Thank you, General Gavish. Indeed, actually, I misspoke earlier. I said that there was less intensity in the northern and southern. I meant to say in the northern and central Gaza Strip, since the central Gaza Strip, as was mentioned by IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Agari, that the IDF actually completed the eradication or destruction of the terror infrastructure where they create various rockets and missiles to be utilized against Israel and the northern Gaza Strip. Obviously, with that being said, I know you're in uniform and you mentioned what you said, but I personally think, and every military savvy individual understands that the diminishing of forces at the height of battle at this point in time is not strategically inclined. Rather, it is in order to appease international circles, particularly also the United States, which repeatedly and very deliberately demanded the transition of the phase into a lower intensity situation, something that unfortunately has no military considerations to it. And it sounds very similar to the decision to commit to an over-the-horizon approach, so to speak, of special operators and such in Afghanistan following the disengagement from that territory by NATO-led forces or the U.S.-led forces, including NATO there. But I'd like to turn to retired Colonel Dr. Eran Lerman, who's formerly a Deputy Director of Israel's National Security Council, currently in the capacity of the Vice President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security and the Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Strategic Tribune, alongside, of course, his position here in TV7 as the host or co-host of TV7's Middle East Review, among others. Thank you for joining us, sir. I'd like to ask you particularly about the strategic framework of what Israel currently operates in. Obviously, we have transited from EUCOM into Central Command, CENTCOM, which now demands Israel not only operate within the bounds of what the U.S. has planned for this region, but also takes more into consideration the position of the United States when it contends with our joint enemy, and that is namely the Islamic Republic of Iran and the extension thereof, namely its various proxies throughout the region, including the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is allied with Islamist Hamas, Hezbollah, the various... Excuse me?
No, right. This is a whole... PIJ is clearly an Iranian proxy. They work for the Iranians, whereas Hamas work with the Iranians. It's a distinction without much of a difference, but we need to bear in mind that the Iranians are behind much of what we're seeing now.
Absolutely, and therefore also the militias in Syria, in Iraq, and in Yemen. Go ahead.
Well, I wouldn't lay the blame, frankly, on CENTCOM and our American military partners when it comes to pressures on Israel. They understand warfare, they understand our situation, they understand our needs, and I think there's been a rather smooth interaction with the American military and the DoD generally on the conduct of the war. They also understand that Israel's determination to carry this war through to the destruction of the Hamas as a governing function and as a military capacity in all of Gaza cannot be changed. This is a given. There may be voices in Israel who would now prioritize the hostage question over the pursuit of the war to its inevitable end. But that's not the position of the majority of Israelis, and it's not the position of the military, and it's not the position of the government. And I believe the American administration understands that. What they want from us nowadays is mainly to begin to refer in a more coherent way to the day after, and that's without going too deeply into Israeli political complications. It's not easy to do given the composition of the current governing coalition in Israel. But I can say that there is a growing understanding, certainly within the Israeli defense establishment, that this needs to be done and there needs to be a closer dialogue with the US. The point here is that the Americans, for reasons of their own, tend to rely far too much on the capacity of the Palestinian Authority to play a role in all of this. And from all that we know, and others who have worked with the Palestinians know, the PA in Ramallah is simply not capable of taking over the messy, complex mission of managing Gaza in the day after. So we need to find new ideas and new avenues for dialogue with the administration on this question.
Thank you, Dr. Lewan. I did not accuse CENTCOM nor the DoD. I think that the rational component in the American establishment at this point has conducted itself in exemplary manner. And even I made the analogy between the Gaza Strip, that transition, to the one that was also made in Afghanistan with the disengagement to all completely. Also in Afghanistan, the State Department and the White House did not heed the advice of DoD and the Pentagon, particularly CENTCOM, which urged to leave at least a contingent in Afghanistan in order to support the government at the time that was at least aiming to be an integral part of the international community in a good standing position, as opposed to the various organizations and groups that once again reemerged there following the disengagements. But let's now turn to retired Colonel Joel Rayburn, who is the founding director of the American Center for Levant Studies, formerly the director or senior director in the U.S. National Security Council for Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, as well as, of course, the U.S. Special Envoy for Syria, among others. It's good to see you, Colonel. I'd like to ask you, from your prism, how do you see the current developments taking hold? The United States seems to be taking a solid stance against Ansar Allah, namely the so-called Houthis in Yemen. But at the same time, we see the Islamic Republic of Iran escalate tensions and pressure in other regions, namely in Iraq, where it targeted with ballistic missiles, of course. Northern Iraq, we saw the attack in Idlib, which, while I fully support the destruction of Tahrir al-Sham and the other jihadist groups there, I think that it was more of a signal to all nations in the region rather than just conducting that strike, and of course utilizing another strike against Pakistan, which already drew a retaliation and may see an exacerbation of hostilities between those two countries.
Well, the situation we have right now is, I think the entire world can see that the Iranian regime is lashing out at the region all around it, as well as, has been intervening in a European war. in an unprecedented way. And so what the international community, what the rest of the world, I think is inching toward is a containment policy toward the Iranian regime, or a deterrent policy toward the Iranian regime. But the U.S. administration is also inching toward that, but without acknowledging that that's the problem that's driving all of these regional conflagrations. That it's the Iranian regime that is the source of all of this regional instability. It'll get harder and harder not to acknowledge that, given the kind of things that the Iranians are doing, such as this inexplicable ballistic missile attack against Pakistani territory, which doesn't really serve a strategic purpose, can't be justified. What we have now, so I'll give you an example. The Houthi problem, or the Houthi attacks, which is really IRGC proxy attacks into the Red Sea, this is a Tehran problem. This is a problem sourced from the Supreme Leader and the Revolutionary Guards. The U.S. response has been to conduct military measures against Houthi installations, and that's ongoing even as late as last night. It happened again. And yesterday to redesignate the Houthis a specially designated global terrorist organization. But to do that in the absence of the enforcement of similar pressure, economic, non-military pressure against the Iranian regime. So the U.S. administration still is not there. They still are holding on to the possibility that at some point, if things calm down, that there can be a return to some sort of 2015 type of process of an agreement, a de-escalatory agreement with the Iranian regime, which is frankly, it's just not going to happen. But that reality has not yet sunk fully in for the administration.
Which was quite apparent when U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a Q&A session with Thomas Friedman at the World Economic Forum in Davos, highlighted that he sees it as a very bad mistake when the Trump administration withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, namely the 2015 nuclear agreement with the Islamic Republic of Iran, irrespective. And it seems like nobody cares to highlight the fact that it was withdrawn after an attempt to hold dialogue both with French President Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders to try and tighten this agreement so its flaws would not enable Iran to then break out the moment it sees fit. We have roughly 3 minutes left, so each of you have exactly 1 minute, and I will stop you if you don't. General Gavish, we'll start with you. When you're looking right now, what is the most important point to focus on for the next 24 hours?
First of all, Jonathan, I'm military, so I'll be disciplined, and it even will take less than 1 minute, although that I wasted 20 of them. I would say that the most important thing is, from the IDF point of view, is to be determined and to show our enemies that we are determined, and we are determined to gain our goals in the Gaza Strip against the Hamas.
Thank you, General Gavish. Very meticulous indeed. Dr. Lerman?
I would say that Secretary Blinken is absolutely right that we are at the point of inflection, but he is wrong in defining the nature of this inflection. It's not towards a Palestinian state and a Saudi normalization. It's the point of inflection that should lead to an international community dealing firmly with Iran's provocations, very much in line of what Colonel Rabin has said, and the time has come for this as they lash out in all directions.
Thank you, Colonel. I'd like to turn the last question also to Colonel Rayburn. Same question to you, but at the same time, I'd like you also to expand on what are not only the challenges for the next 24 hours, but to what degree are those challenges going to impact the subsequent period?
Well, listen, we have a U.S. administration that is staffed at the most senior levels of its foreign policy and national security establishment, almost universally by people that had a hand in negotiating the JCPOA. up to 2015. So I understand it's very difficult for them to admit that they were wrong, to admit the JCPOA was done with a regime that it shouldn't have been done with, that there should have been a deterrent posture all along. It's very difficult for them to do that. I don't think they're going to be capable of it, barring some real explosion that's going to force them into that. So that's what I'm afraid of, is that this is the lack of an acknowledgement that the policy of 2014-15 was wrong is going to lead to something that will compel them to reply.
Is it inevitable?
It's inevitable if they continue on the path, because are the Iranians deterred? Are the Iranians deterred both from acting directly or from using their proxies? The answer is no. The Iranians are getting more provocative. And so until there is a coherent and international allied deterrent response, then it's going to continue to worsen and worsen.
Indeed. Well, this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Dr. Lerman, Colonel Rayburn, and General Gavish for taking out of your times to update us on the latest. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well, and also take this opportunity to highlight TV7 Israel is 100% donation-based, which enables us, of course, to produce all of those programs that you can watch on social media or on your respective channels back home, and to do so free of charge. But in order to be able to do so, of course, we need your support. And for that, I'd like to encourage you to donate. Go to our website where it's possible to do so at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Hessen from here in Jerusalem. Until our next update. Shalom.
Shalom, I'm Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy foreign minister and member of Knesset. Today, I'm very privileged to be hosting TV7's Middle East Review and also being a panelist of the various shows of TV7, which I find the most enlightening, most educating if you really want to understand the world, the global scene as well as the regional scene of the Middle East. It is worthwhile to watch TV7.